Welcome to video 3 in a 5-part series on the AMS Pathfinder hacks. This video focuses on a particular method that might be familiar to those that have run Roper Whitney's the Orion controller. This particular function we're going to demonstrate today is how to bend a profile that you would need to come back and add another operation. So the example that I've chosen today is a pretty typical profile that we'd be bending, which is a style D. This one looks like it's probably about a 5 or 6/12 pitch for a roof, and the way to start is to get everything, like you have your part drawn, we're going to go over and sequence this part. Now, because of the small segments, the Pathfinder wasn't able to find a way to sequence this part on its own. So what I've done is I've sequenced this part with, and I'll take you through this real quick, is the bend for the hem, closing the hem, and then it's just going to kick it out. And if you'll notice, this particular bend isn't possible, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to convert this to a non-graphical. And if you watch video 2, you'll also realize that, or you'll know the way to clamp this hem without putting any dimples or creases in it. And once that drip is done, then you'll close the part and have it finished. So obviously this profile isn't possible the way I have it programmed, so I'm going to demonstrate to you how that would be done. So in the machine operations, I would recommend going through, and if you make any changes normally, like if you're doing a hem, like I like to offset when I close the hem, I like to offset the back gauge 0.12 inches. When I bend it, I like to have the clamp open to 0.6 inches so I can push the material in without having to raise the head manually. And also, because we're clamping that hem and putting a bend in it from video 2, you'll see that I've raised it 0.2 inches, and also I've added a couple 15 degrees to it to compensate for that. So once everything you have is programmed, or it's sequenced and then adjusted in here, you'll save your part, which I've already done, and you'll go to the open file, hit the open file button. I've named this sample, and we'll copy this profile. And when we do that, I'm just going to keep the name the same, but you want to copy it to non-graphical, and it will take all those machine operations that you had before and convert them. It'll just make them in a list like a traditional, like if on one of the earliest controllers. So we'll load that profile. Now, one thing that didn't transfer, and I didn't notice this until I tried making this video previously, was that it didn't do the back gauge offset for me, so I'm going to have to do that manually. So 7.625 plus 0.12 would give me 7.745. Hopefully that's right. Should be. I'll find out. It's nothing real major. So I've got my hem. It's got my clamp up position. I've got that changed. So what I want to do in this situation, and you'll remember that as soon as I made this bend, it made this one pretty much impossible because it was interfering with the machine. So what I want to do is change this to 90. And for those of you that have bent style D, this is hopefully pretty standard for you. And we'll insert another bend right after that, and this is where we'll go and do the hem for the D part of the metal. And I wouldn't recommend going the 145 because it'll take some of the bend out of the previous bend. So I normally go like 140. You can go 135. It just makes it a little bit harder to clamp down on it. In between these two operations, there is a flip forward, and it's not critical, but if you have somebody that doesn't necessarily know or isn't used to running the machine, it's nice for them to have. And you'll also want to change your back gauge. So when I originally did this, I was at 5, and you can change your back gauge to, I would go 5.5. That way you're just gauging off of the metal instead of off of the back gauge. That also makes it possible to do style D without a hem, because like if you're doing it without a hem, you should be gauging everything off of that drip edge, and this allows you to do that as well if you do that bend first. That's pretty straightforward, hopefully. If you follow these steps, it should be pretty easy. This makes a lot of sense to me because it basically turns the functionality of this into the Orion controller and allows you to insert lines. It's great for certain situations, obviously. This one is one in particular. I'm sure there's other ones. I couldn't think of any other ones because this is the one that I use the most. But if you're coming from an Orion controller and you need to add in another bend, or you just need to have something silly in between because it just needs to be there, then this would be where you would do it at. That was video number 3.